My husband drained $67,000 from our accounts and disappeared with my baby sister. I was living in a women's shelter in Covington, Kentucky, sleeping on a donated mattress that smelled like industrial bleach, with $14 in my pocket and a prepaid phone from the Rotary Club. Then, a man in a $3,000 suit walked into the benefits office and said 4 words that changed everything. "You're a victim, ma'am." But here's the thing. He wasn't talking about my husband. He wasn't talking about my sister. He was talking about the woman who'd been bringing me turkey sandwiches 3 times a week, who'd cried with me, prayed with me, held my hand through the worst 8 weeks of my life. My best friend, Whitney, the woman I'd trusted for 8 years, the woman who was sitting on my couch the whole time, a couch she'd bought with a credit card she'd opened in my name. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to a Tuesday in March, because apparently Tuesdays hate me personally. I came home from work at 5:47 in the evening. I know the exact time because I remember glancing at the dashboard clock on my Honda Civic and thinking I might actually have time to make that chicken stir-fry recipe I'd bookmarked 3 weeks ago and never tried. That's what I was thinking about. Chicken stir-fry. Sesame oil. Whether we had enough soy sauce. I was not thinking about the fact that my entire life was about to implode. The apartment door was unlocked, which should have been my first clue. Ryan always locked the door. He was obsessive about it. Former supply chain manager. Everything had to be organized, systematic, secure. Except apparently his affair with my sister, which he'd been organizing and systematizing for the past 8 months without a single security breach. I walked in and stopped. The living room was half empty. Not ransacked, not messy, half empty. Surgically half empty. Like someone had drawn a line down the middle and removed everything on one side with military precision. The couch was gone. The TV was gone. The coffee table my grandmother had given us as a wedding gift, the one with the little scratch on the corner from when Ryan dropped his keys on it, gone. The bookshelf was still there, but half the books were missing. He'd taken his books. He'd left mine. Which would have been thoughtful if he hadn't also taken $67,300 and my baby sister. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Time does weird things when your brain is trying to process something that doesn't fit into any category it knows. I walked to the bedroom. The bed frame was gone. The mattress was on the floor. He'd left the mattress because it had a coffee stain on one corner from 2 years ago when I'd tried to bring him breakfast in bed for his birthday and tripped on the carpet. He'd been annoyed about that stain for 2 years. Now it was mine. The whole stained mattress was mine. Lucky me. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. First National Credit Union, joint savings account, joint checking account, 8 years of marriage in 2 little rectangles on a screen. Savings account balance, $0.00. Previous balance that morning, $47,300. Checking account balance, $0.00. Previous balance that morning, $20,000. $67,300. Gone, transferred, evaporated. I sat down on the stained mattress on the floor of my half-empty bedroom and I stared at those 2 zeros on my phone screen for a very long time. I counted the zeros. I refreshed the app. I counted them again. Still 0. Still 2 of them. Very committed to being 0. Then I saw the note. It was on the kitchen counter, which I'd walked right past without noticing. A piece of paper. Except it wasn't paper. It was the back of a Wendy's receipt. 6 words in Ryan's handwriting. I'm sorry. Please don't call. I'm sorry. Please don't call. 8 years of marriage, 4 years of dating before that, 12 years total, and his final message to me was 6 words on the back of a fast food receipt. I flipped the receipt over. He'd ordered a Baconator combo with a large Frosty. Total came to $9.47. $9.47. That's what our marriage was worth. Less than the cost of his lunch. He couldn't even spring for a blank piece of paper. He couldn't walk 15 feet to the junk drawer and grab an index card. He wrote his goodbye on a receipt that still had frosty residue on the corner. I should have cried. I should have screamed. I should have called someone or thrown something or done any of the things that people do in movies when their lives fall apart. What I did was laugh. I sat on that stained mattress in that empty apartment holding a Wendy's receipt, and I laughed until my stomach hurt. Because what else do you do? What is the appropriate response to discovering that your husband valued your relationship less than a Baconator combo? There's no Hallmark card for this. There's no self-help book titled, What to Do When Your Spouse Chooses Fast Food Over Communication. The laugh turned into something else eventually. Not crying exactly. More like the sound a balloon makes when you let the air out slowly. A long, quiet deflation. I called Ryan's phone. Straight to voicemail. Of course. I called again. Voicemail. Third time. You know what they say about the definition of insanity. Voicemail. His voicemail message was still the one he'd recorded 3 years ago. Hey, it's Ryan. Leave a message. I'll get back to you. 3 years of hearing that message. 3 years of him actually getting back to me. And now, nothing. I texted him. Where are you? Question mark optional because I wasn't really asking. I was demanding. No response. I texted again. What did you do? Where is the money? Nothing. Then I did something stupid. Or maybe smart. I'm still not sure. I called my sister. Amber picked up on the fourth ring. Her voice sounded weird. Far away. Like she was in a car. Nat. Hey. 2 words and I knew. I knew before she said anything else. I knew from the way she said hey, like she'd been expecting this call, like she'd rehearsed for it. Where is he? I said. There was a pause. A long pause. The kind of pause that contains entire confessions. We're in Savannah, she said. We left this morning. I'm sorry, Nat. I'm so sorry, but we're in love. We've been in love for 8 months, and we couldn't keep pretending anymore. 8 months. 8 months of family dinners and birthday parties and Christmas at Mom's house. 8 months of Amber borrowing my straightener, which she still hadn't returned from 2019. 8 months of my husband and my baby sister looking me in the face and lying. I hung up without saying anything else. What was there to say? And then I called my mother. My mother picked up on the second ring, which should have been a red flag right there. Patricia Cross has never in her life picked up on the second ring. Patricia Cross screens her calls like she's auditioning them for a reality show. Patricia Cross once let my father go to voicemail while he was having chest pains because she was watching the finale of The Bachelor. But she picked up on the second ring for me because she knew. Natalie. Her voice was careful, measured, the voice she uses when she's about to deliver bad news and wants you to know she's already decided it's not that bad. Mom, Ryan left. He took everything. He's with Amber. They're in Savannah. Silence. But not the shocked kind. Not the what are you talking about silence. The I already know this information silence. I know, honey. 3 words that hit me harder than the empty apartment. Harder than the 0 balances. Harder than the Wendy's receipt. You know, your sister called me last week. She told me they were planning to leave. She asked me not to say anything. Last week I had dinner at my mother's house. Last week I sat across from her eating her dry meatloaf and talking about whether I should repaint the bathroom. Last week she passed me the salt and asked about my job and told me I looked tired. Last week she knew my husband was planning to steal $67,000 and run away with my sister and she passed me the salt. You knew for a week? You knew and you didn't tell me? Natalie, it wasn't my place. Your sister asked me to stay out of it. She said they needed time to figure things out. Figure things out, like they were planning a vacation, like they weren't dismantling my entire life. Mom, he stole $67,000. Everything we had. That was his money too, Natalie. You don't know the full story. Your sister says you've been difficult lately. She says Ryan hasn't been happy for a long time. Difficult. I processed insurance claims 40 hours a week and came home and made dinner and did laundry and that made me difficult. Mom, I said slowly, he took everything. I have $14. I have nowhere to go. Well, you can't stay here. I'm not getting in the middle of this. Your sister needs my support right now. She's going through a lot. She stole my husband and she's going through a lot. I hung up without saying goodbye. I tried my Uncle Ray next, the one who taught me to ride a bike, the one who cried at my wedding. He didn't pick up. First ring, second ring, voicemail. I tried my cousin Michelle. She texted back 3 hours later. Hey, Nat, I think you should let things cool down. It's complicated. Complicated. The word people use when they don't want to call something what it actually is. I tried my Aunt Donna. Left on red. I tried my cousin Eric. His wife answered and said he was busy. I even tried my grandmother, but she was in memory care at Sunrise of Steubenville, and half the time she thought I was her sister Margaret, who died in 1987. She was actually the most supportive family member I had because at least she was happy to hear from Margaret. By 10 o'clock that night, I'd called 11 people. 3 answered. 0 offered help. The story my mother had told everyone was already spreading. Natalie had been difficult. Natalie had driven Ryan away. Amber was just picking up the pieces. Poor Amber. Brave Amber. My mother had built a narrative so clean you could put it in a Hallmark movie, and everyone bought it. Wednesday morning was when I learned exactly how thoroughly Ryan had planned my destruction. I went outside to get my car, the Honda Civic I'd been driving for 3 years. Gone. Empty parking spot. Oil stain on the concrete. I called the police. The officer took down all the information and then said something that made my knees buckle. "Ma'am, this vehicle was reported recovered this morning by the registered owner, a Ryan Cross. He stated it had been taken without permission. His property. The car was in his name. When you trust someone, you don't read the fine print on your own life. Ryan's name on the car title. Ryan's name on the apartment lease. Ryan's name on the cable bill. My name on a joint bank account that now had the same balance as my self-esteem. 0. I walked back to the apartment. Phil, the landlord, was waiting for me. Phil with his transition lenses and his cargo shorts in March. "Ryan called," Phil said. "Said you'd be out by end of week. Friday." 3 days. "Nothing personal." Phil shrugged. "Just business." I had 3 days to find somewhere to live. $14. No car, no family willing to help. 2 garbage bags of clothes and a Bath & Body Works gift card with $2.75 on it. Thursday, I went to my job, claims analyst at Midwest Health Insurance. 8:45 in the morning, walking through the parking lot like everything was normal. My badge didn't work. I swiped it 3 times. Red light, red light, red light. The security guard called HR. A woman named Janet came down. Janet, who had never said anything to me more personal than the copier, is jammed again. "Natalie, we received a call indicating you were leaving the company for medical reasons. Your position has been filled." "Medical reasons? Who called?" "I'm not authorized to share that information." She didn't need to. Ryan had called my employer and told them I was leaving for medical reasons. He hadn't just stolen my money. He'd stolen my job, my credit, my car, my family. He'd written me out of my own life like a character getting killed off a TV show. I sat on the curb outside my former workplace for 20 minutes. I counted cracks in the sidewalk, 7 cracks. That's what your brain does when it can't process what's happening. It counts cracks. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. Whitney Barnes, church friend for 8 years, single mom, the kindest person I knew. "Heard what happened? Where are you right now?" 20 minutes later, her beat-up Subaru Forester pulled up to the curb. That car was held together by bumper stickers and optimism. She got out carrying a Panera bag, turkey avocado BLT. She remembered my order. She wrapped her arms around me right there in the parking lot and didn't ask a single question. I thought I was saved. Whitney's apartment smelled like cinnamon and laundry detergent. Clean, warm, safe. Everything my life wasn't anymore. She lived on Madison Avenue in a 2-bedroom place with her daughter Emma, 8 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, obsessed with a cartoon about a dog who solves mysteries. Emma came running to the door when we walked in and wrapped her arms around my legs like we were old friends. We'd met maybe 6 times at church potlucks. "Miss Natalie, are you staying for dinner?" Whitney smiled. "Miss Natalie is staying for a couple nights, baby. She's having a hard time right now." Emma nodded like this made perfect sense. Then she disappeared into her bedroom and came back with a stuffed elephant. Gray fur, floppy ears, one eye slightly loose. "You can borrow Peanut," she said. "He helps with bad dreams." I held that elephant all night. I'm not ashamed to admit it. When you have nothing, you take comfort where you can find it, even if it's a stuffed animal with a loose eye that smells like grape juice. Whitney set me up on her couch. New couch, I noticed. Nice fabric, deep cushions, the kind of couch you sink into. "This is nice," I said, running my hand over the arm. "Is this new?" "Got it on sale." Whitney shrugged. "Restoration Hardware Outlet. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I'd never bought anything from Restoration Hardware in my life, but I nodded because she was being kind and I was in no position to question anything. That first night, Whitney made spaghetti. Store-bought sauce, nothing fancy, but it was the first real meal I'd eaten in 2 days. We sat at her kitchen table and she let me talk. She let me cry. She let me rage about Ryan and Amber and my mother and the Wendy's receipt. $9.47, I said for probably the 15th time. He wrote his goodbye on a receipt for a Baconator combo. Whitney shook her head. Men are trash, Nat. I've been saying it for years. She had. Her own husband had walked out when Emma was 2, just left a note on the refrigerator, which I guess was the male exit strategy of choice in the greater Cincinnati metropolitan area. She'd rebuilt her life piece by piece. Got a job as receptionist at a veterinary clinic. Found this apartment. Raised Emma on her own. I'm basically a professional at failed marriages, she said that night, pouring me a glass of tap water because neither of us could afford wine. If they gave out degrees, I'd have a PhD and a teaching position. I laughed. First real laugh in days. The second night, Whitney sat me down gently. Nat, I love you. You know I do. But I can't keep you here long term. Emma needs stability. The landlord has a strict occupancy clause. And honestly, this apartment is barely big enough for the two of us. I know, I said. I understand. But I found something. Whitney pulled out her phone. Hope Harbor Women's Shelter. It's in Covington, just across the river. Clean, safe, good reputation. They have a program coordinator who helps with job placement and legal aid. A shelter. I was going to live in a shelter. I'll drive you there myself, Whitney said. And I'll be there every step of the way. I promise. What kind of person would I be to argue? Hope Harbor was on 16th Street in Covington, Kentucky, a brown brick building that used to be a church. Still had the stained glass windows, though most of them were covered with plywood from the inside. Security reasons, I learned later. Sandra Webb ran the place, former social worker, mid-40s, built like a woman who'd seen everything and had exactly zero patience for nonsense, but infinite patience for pain. She handed me a towel, a bar of soap, and a folder of paperwork. You're safe here, she said. We'll figure out the rest. My room was a twin bed, a particle board nightstand, and a plastic bin for my belongings. The bin was about a third full after I unpacked my 2 garbage bags. The mattress smelled like industrial bleach, which I told myself was actually a good sign. At least they were cleaning things. Lights out at 10, no visitors after 7. Communal kitchen, communal bathroom, communal everything. My whole world had shrunk to a 70-square-foot room with a donated pillow and a window that looked out at a brick wall. That first night, I met Maureen. Maureen Doyle was 62 years old, took up more space than her body required, and had a voice that carried through cinder block walls like they were made of tissue paper. Former paralegal, she told me within 30 seconds of meeting her. 23 years at a law firm in Cincinnati. Husband left her for his dental hygienist. Classic, she said, like she was describing a wine vintage. Within 24 hours of my arrival, Maureen had used my phone charger without asking, eaten the last granola bar I'd bought with my dwindling $14, and told me my haircut made me look like a sad substitute teacher. She wasn't wrong about the haircut, but still, the shelter had rules posted on every wall. No drugs, no alcohol, no violence. Sign in and sign out. Curfew at 10. Chores on a rotating schedule. I was assigned bathroom duty on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I lay in my twin bed that first night and stared at the ceiling, counted the cracks, 4 cracks, a water stain in the corner that looked like Abraham Lincoln if you squinted. 6 days ago, I had a husband, a home, a car, a job, and $67,000 in the bank. Now I had a plastic bin, a borrowed stuffed elephant, and bathroom duty on Wednesdays. Somewhere in Savannah, Ryan and Amber were probably drinking cocktails on a beach, spending my money, living my life. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But at this point, what else could possibly go wrong? The voice on the other end was professional, bored. The voice of someone who makes these calls 50 times a day and has stopped caring about the humans on the receiving end. Am I speaking with Natalie Cross? Yes. Who is this? This is Marcus from Capital One Collections. I'm calling regarding your account ending in 4729. Your current balance is $9,200 and your payment is 63 days past due. I sat up in my twin bed. The springs creaked. Maureen snored through the wall. I don't have a Capital One card. Ma'am, This account was opened 4 months ago. The application lists your social security number, your date of birth, and your address as 147 Madison Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. That's not my address. I've never lived on Madison Avenue. Silence. The sound of typing. Ma'am, the account shows regular purchases over the past 4 months. Gas stations, restaurants. A purchase at DSW for $380. Another at Target for $212. I didn't make those purchases. Someone stole my identity. I can transfer you to our fraud department if you'd like to dispute the charges. Yes, please. Hold music. Terrible hold music. The kind that sounds like someone recorded an elevator in 1987. I waited 11 minutes. Then the line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. $9,200. A credit card I never opened. An address I'd never lived at. 147 Madison Avenue. Why did that address sound familiar? It hit me at 4:17 in the morning. Whitney's apartment was 1847 Madison. Different building, same street. Coincidence, I told myself. Madison Avenue is a long street, lots of apartments. But my brain wouldn't let it go. The next morning, Whitney picked me up from the shelter. Turkey avocado BLT from Panera. She remembered my order. I told her about the collections call. Her face went through all the right expressions. Shock, outrage, sympathy. That bastard, she said. Ryan did this. He's not just a cheater, Nat. He's a criminal. She was so certain. So angry on my behalf. I felt guilty for even noticing that the address was on her street. I have a meeting at DHR, I said. Food stamps application. I'll drive you. Whitney squeezed my hand. We're getting through this together. The DHR office was on Market Street, sandwiched between a payday loan place and a tattoo shop. Plastic chairs. Fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly deceased. A motivational poster on the wall. Cartoon family holding hands under a rainbow. Every family deserves support. I stared at that poster for 47 minutes, while a toddler 2 seats over screamed about goldfish crackers and his mother stared into the middle distance like she'd stopped caring about goldfish crackers approximately 18 months ago. The caseworker's name was Linda. About 50, reading glasses on a beaded chain, typed with 2 fingers like each key had personally offended her. She entered my information into the system. Name, date of birth, address, Hope Harbor Women's Shelter. Income, none. Assets, see income. Then she typed in my social security number and stopped. She typed it again, slower, checking each digit. She took off her reading glasses, put them back on, looked at me, looked at the screen. Ma'am, can you excuse me for one moment? She walked to a back office. Through the glass partition, I watched her talk to a supervisor. He leaned over the screen, typed something. They both looked at me. I sat there thinking 3 things simultaneously. 1, I was about to be denied food stamps. 2, I was going to cry in public for the 6th time this month. 3, maybe Maureen was right about the haircut making me look like a sad substitute teacher. The supervisor came out, asked me questions that sounded like a police interview. When did you last use your social security number? Had I authorized anyone else to use it? Was I aware of active credit lines in my name? How many? His face did something complicated. 4, ma'am. There are 4 credit cards currently open in your name. 4. Not 1. 4. Capital 1. $9,200. Discover. $7,800. Chase Sapphire. $6,400. Crate and Barrel Store Credit. $6,400. $29,800 in credit card debt I didn't know existed. Plus the $67,300 Ryan had stolen from our accounts. $97,100. Gone. Stolen. Attached to my name like an anchor. Someone would be in contact with me, the supervisor said. I should freeze my credit immediately. I walked outside, sat on a bench, watched pigeons fight over a hot dog bun, counted them, 7 pigeons. That's what your brain does when it can't process what's happening. It counts pigeons. Whitney was waiting in the parking lot. She saw my face and got out of the car. What happened? 4 credit cards, I said. Someone opened 4 credit cards in my name, almost $30,000. Her eyes went wide, her hand covered her mouth. Oh my God, Nat! Ryan! It has to be Ryan. He had access to all your documents. She pulled me into a hug, the kind of hug that says, I've got you. We're going to nail him, she whispered. I promise. I leaned into her shoulder and cried, my best friend holding me up while my world collapsed. She drove me back to the shelter, walked me to the door, promised to come back tomorrow. I watched her Subaru pull away and thought about how lucky I was. My husband abandoned me. My sister betrayed me. My mother chose sides. But Whitney was still here. Whitney showed up. Whitney remembered my sandwich order and never asked for anything in return. Some people disappear when your life falls apart, and some people become everything. I went inside and held that stuffed elephant and told myself things would be okay, because I had Whitney. And Whitney would never let me down, right? 2 days later, a man in a $3,000 suit walked into my life. I know it was $3,000 because I looked up the brand later. Hugo Boss, charcoal gray, the kind of suit that has a name like Executive Slate or Boardroom Confidence. The kind of suit that costs more than 3 months of my rent used to be. I was sitting in the DHR waiting room again. Same plastic chairs, same fluorescent lights, same rainbow family poster mocking me from the wall. I'd been called back for additional paperwork because apparently, when 4 credit cards get opened in your name without your knowledge, the government wants to ask you approximately 900 questions about it. The man walked in like he owned the building. Leather laptop bag, manila folder thick enough to be a short novel. He spoke to the receptionist. She pointed at me. He walked over, sat down in the plastic chair next to mine. The chair groaned like it wasn't used to supporting someone who shopped at Hugo Boss. Mrs. Cross? Yes? I'm Leonard Ashford, Senior Fraud Specialist with Ohio Valley Credit Union. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. Cream-colored. Embossed lettering. I've been looking for you. I stared at him, stared at the card, stared at him again. Am I in trouble? No, ma'am. He shook his head slowly. You're a victim. Those 4 words. You're a victim. They shouldn't feel like relief. Victim is not a word anyone wants attached to their name. But when you've spent 3 weeks being told you're crazy, unstable, difficult, and responsible for everything that happened to you, hearing a man in an expensive suit say no, actually, someone did this to you, is like oxygen after drowning. Leonard Ashford was not warm and fuzzy. Leonard Ashford was a spreadsheet with legs. Gray hair cut military short. Eyes that had seen every kind of fraud humans could invent. Handshake that meant business. He opened his laptop right there in the waiting room, pulled up files, walked me through what the credit union had found. $67,300 transferred from your joint accounts in a series of Zelle and Venmo transactions over a 72-hour window. Receiving accounts linked to email addresses containing variations of your husband's name. I nodded. I knew that part. In addition, he clicked to another screen. 4 credit cards opened using your social security number, your date of birth, and your mother's maiden name as the security question. I knew that part too. The total exposure across all fraudulent accounts is approximately $97,100. He said it like he was reading a weather report. $97,100. Partly cloudy with a chance of financial devastation. The credit union had flagged my accounts 4 weeks ago. They'd been trying to contact me at Ryan's phone number because mine was listed as secondary. They'd sent letters to the Maple Street apartment, which I no longer lived at. They'd been chasing a ghost. Then my social security number popped up in the state benefit system, cross-referenced with the fraud flag, and here we were. I have some questions, Leonard said, about the credit card applications. Okay. The applications were submitted online, 4 different times over 6 months. The IP addresses traced to 2 locations, one in Savannah, Georgia. Ryan, that made sense. And one here in Cincinnati. I blinked. Cincinnati? Ryan hasn't been in Cincinnati since he left. Leonard's face didn't change. He typed something. The billing addresses on 3 of the 4 cards are variations of the same street. Madison Avenue, numbers 147, 153, and 1847. My blood went cold. 1847 Madison Avenue. Whitney's address. I must have made a face because Leonard looked up from his laptop. Do you recognize that address, Mrs. Cross? I opened my mouth, closed it. It's probably nothing. My friend lives on Madison Avenue, but lots of people live on Madison Avenue. Leonard wrote something in his notebook. What's your friend's name? Whitney Barnes. He wrote that down too. Didn't comment. Didn't react. Just wrote it down like it was one data point among hundreds. I felt sick. Physically sick. It was a coincidence. It had to be a coincidence. Whitney was my best friend. Whitney had held me while I cried. Whitney brought me sandwiches and gave me her old laptop and drove me across town 3 times a week. Whitney would never. We'll be in touch, Leonard said, closing his laptop. In the meantime, I'd recommend you don't discuss this investigation with anyone. Not family, not friends, no one. He handed me another business card, his direct line. Call me if you remember anything else. I walked out of the DHR office on legs that didn't feel like mine. The sun was too bright. The sidewalk was too solid. Everything felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. My phone buzzed. Whitney. Hey, girl. How did it go? Want me to pick you up? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. It went fine. I'll take the bus. Talk later. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Okay. Love you. Call me tonight. I put my phone in my pocket and walked to the bus stop. 1847 Madison Avenue. It was a coincidence. Madison Avenue was a long street, hundreds of apartments, thousands of people. But my brain kept doing the math. Whitney had access to my documents. That first night at her apartment, when she said, "Let me help you organize your paperwork," I'd handed her the folder. Social Security card. Birth certificate. Pay stubs. She'd flipped through everything. She'd held my entire identity in her hands. No. I shook my head. Physically shook it like I could rattle the thought loose. Whitney was my best friend. Whitney was the only person who showed up. Whitney would never do this to me. The bus came. I got on, found a seat in the back. And I tried very hard not to think about 1847 Madison Avenue. I didn't call Whitney that night. I told myself it was because I was tired, because the shelter had lights out at 10 and I needed sleep, because I'd had a long day and my brain was fried and I just needed some space. But that wasn't why. I didn't call Whitney because every time I closed my eyes, I saw 1847 Madison Avenue floating in the darkness like a neon sign. Maureen noticed something was off. Of course she did. Maureen noticed everything. She had the observational skills of a retired CIA agent and the subtlety of a fire alarm. "You look like someone kicked your dog," she said that night in the communal kitchen. I was eating instant oatmeal. She was eating my instant oatmeal. I'd stopped fighting her on the food theft. It wasn't worth the energy. "I don't have a dog." Hypothetical dog. Maureen waved her spoon. "Point stands. Something happened today." Nothing happened. She stared at me. That Maureen stare. Head tilted, eyes narrowed, like she was reading the ingredients on the back of my soul and finding something suspicious. "Your friend came by earlier, the one with the Subaru. Sandra told her you weren't here. Whitney came by?" "Mm-hmm." Maureen took another bite of my oatmeal. "Brought you food, turkey sandwich, left it at the front desk." I felt my stomach tighten. "She comes here a lot," Maureen continued. 3 times this week already. 4 times the week before. Every single time with food or clothes or some little gift. "She's helping me," Maureen snorted. "That's a lot of helping." "She's my best friend. We've known each other for 8 years. Another snort. Louder this time. "Let me tell you something, honey." Maureen set down her spoon. "I spent 23 years as a paralegal. 23 years watching people lie to each other in depositions and courtrooms and conference rooms. You know what I learned? People don't do things for free. Everyone wants something. Whitney doesn't want anything. She's just a good person." Maureen laughed. Actually laughed. The kind of laugh that says, "Oh, you sweet, naive child." Nobody drives across town 3 times a week to bring turkey sandwiches to someone in a shelter. Nobody takes off work early and uses their own gas money. Nobody gives away their old laptop and their old clothes and their old furniture. She paused. "Unless they're getting something out of it. You don't know her." "I don't need to know her." Maureen stood up, taking the rest of my oatmeal with her. "I know people. And that girl? She's got an angle. The helpers are usually the problem." She walked away, left me sitting there with an empty bowl and a head full of thoughts I didn't want to think. Maureen was paranoid. Maureen saw conspiracy in everything. Maureen had accused the shelter of watering down the dish soap, which, to be fair, they absolutely were. She'd accused Sandra of reading her mail. She'd accused the night security guard of stealing her good pen. But that didn't mean she was right about Whitney. Whitney was my friend, my best friend, the only person who showed up when everyone else disappeared. But she did come by a lot. 3 times this week, 4 times the week before, always with food, always with offers to help. Always wanting to know what I'd learned, who I'd talked to, what the investigators had said. She'd asked a lot of questions about Leonard Ashford. What did he want? What did he ask? Did he mention any names? Did he have any leads? I'd told her everything, every detail, every piece of information Leonard had shared with me, including the fact that they were tracing IP addresses. Stop it, I told myself. Stop thinking like this. Whitney was my friend. Whitney had given me a place to sleep when I had nowhere to go. Whitney had held me while I cried and promised we'd get through this together. Whitney would never betray me. My phone buzzed. Speaking of which, "Hey stranger, you okay? You've been quiet today." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Just tired. Long day at DHR." 3 dots appeared. Then her response. "Anything new with the investigation? Did that guy from the credit union contact you again?" There it was. The question. The same question she asked every time we talked. What did Leonard say? What did the investigators find? Are they any closer to catching Ryan? Always steering the conversation toward the investigation. Always wanting to know exactly what I knew. "Not yet," I typed, still waiting to hear back. A lie. Leonard had called me that afternoon, asked me to come to his office tomorrow morning, said he had something important to show me, something about the credit card applications. I hadn't told Whitney about that meeting. I wasn't sure why. "Okay," she replied. "Let me know if you need anything. I'm here for you. Always." I put down the phone and stared at the ceiling, counted the cracks. 5 cracks tonight, 1 more than yesterday. The shelter was literally falling apart around me, just like everything else. 1847 Madison Avenue. Whitney's address. The same street as 3 of the 4 fraudulent credit cards. And Whitney had access to my documents, my social security card, my birth certificate, my pay stubs, everything someone would need to open accounts in my name. That first night at her apartment, when she said, "Let me help you organize your paperwork," I'd handed her the entire folder. No. I was being paranoid. Maureen's conspiracy theories were infecting my brain like a virus. Whitney was my friend. Whitney was innocent. The addresses were a coincidence. Madison Avenue was a long street. Hundreds of buildings, thousands of residents. But tomorrow I was meeting Leonard, and tomorrow he was going to show me something. And for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. I closed my eyes, held that stuffed elephant against my chest, and I tried very hard to sleep. Leonard Ashford's office was on the 4th floor of the Ohio Valley Credit Union building on Main Street. One of those old bank buildings with marble floors and brass elevator doors that made you feel like you were entering a place that took money very seriously. Which was ironic, given that mine had evaporated. I arrived at 9:15 in the morning, 15 minutes early because my mother raised me to be punctual even if she also raised me to be abandoned by my entire family when things got hard. The receptionist was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and a cardigan that looked like it had been knitted by someone who loved her. She smiled when I gave my name. "Mr. Ashford is expecting you. 4th floor. Take the elevator on your left." The elevator was old. Brass doors, wood paneling, the kind of elevator that probably had an operator in 1952. It creaked all the way up, like it was personally offended by my presence. Leonard was waiting when the doors opened. Same gray suit, same military haircut, same expression of professional neutrality. "Mrs. Cross, thank you for coming." He led me to a conference room at the end of the hall. Long table, leather chairs, a window that looked out over Main Street and the river beyond. "Please, sit." I sat. He sat across from me, opened his laptop, opened a manila folder thick with papers. "I've been reviewing the credit card applications," he said. "The ones opened in your name." I nodded. My throat was dry. As I mentioned, the IP addresses traced to 2 locations, Savannah, Georgia, and Cincinnati, Ohio. I nodded again. "The Savannah applications are straightforward. We believe those were submitted by your husband. The email addresses match his known aliases. That made sense. Ryan in Savannah, Ryan opening credit cards, Ryan being the criminal everyone expected him to be. But the Cincinnati applications are more complicated. Leonard turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was a map with red dots scattered across it. These are the IP addresses associated with the Cincinnati submissions, he pointed. This one is from a public library on Vine Street. This one is from a coffee shop in Clifton. And this one, he pointed to a third dot. This one is from a residential address, 1847 Madison Avenue. There it was, that address again, floating in front of me like a ghost. I told you, I said. My friend lives on Madison Avenue, but that doesn't mean anything. Leonard's face didn't change. He reached into the manila folder and pulled out a sheet of paper. This is a delivery confirmation from Crate & Barrel, a purchase made on the store credit card opened in your name, $6,400 worth of furniture. Delivered to 1847 Madison Avenue, apartment 3B. I stared at the paper. The words blurred. Apartment 3B, Whitney's apartment. The signature on the delivery receipt is illegible, but the name printed beneath it is W. Barnes. W. Barnes. Whitney Barnes. I felt the room tilt. The marble floors, the brass fixtures, the beautiful view, all of it sliding sideways like a ship taking on water. There must be a mistake. Leonard pulled out another paper. This is a Zelle transfer record. Over the past 8 months, an account registered to Whitney Barnes has received $26,000 in transfers from an account registered to Ryan Cross. $26,000. 8 months. 8 months ago, I was still married. Still living in my apartment, still cooking dinner for Ryan and inviting Whitney over for wine nights and thinking everything was fine. The earliest transfer was dated 6 months before your husband left, Leonard continued. The most recent was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. While I was living in a shelter. While Whitney was bringing me turkey sandwiches and telling me everything was going to be okay. I don't understand. My voice sounded far away, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. Mrs. Cross. Leonard closed the folder. I'm not here to tell you what to think, but the evidence suggests that Whitney Barnes has been involved in this scheme from the beginning, possibly before your husband even left. No. The credit cards, the furniture purchases, the Zelle transfers, the IP addresses. No. Whitney is my best friend. She would never. Leonard said nothing. He just looked at me with those eyes that had seen every kind of fraud humans could invent. And I realized he'd seen this before. This exact moment. The moment when someone realizes the person they trusted most was the one holding the knife. I stood up. The chair scraped against the marble floor. I need to go. Mrs. Cross. Leonard stood too. I need you to understand something. If Whitney Barnes is involved, confronting her could compromise the investigation. I need you to act normal. Don't change anything. Don't let her know you suspect anything. For how long? However long it takes to build the case. 2 weeks, maybe 3. 2 weeks of looking Whitney in the face. 2 weeks of accepting her sandwiches and her rides and her hugs. 2 weeks of pretending I didn't know she'd stolen my identity and furnished her apartment with my credit. Can you do that? I didn't answer. I just walked out. The elevator creaked all the way down. The receptionist smiled at me as I passed. Have a nice day, she said. I made it to the bus stop before I started crying. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind where your face is wet but you don't make any sound because you're afraid if you start making sound you'll never stop. $26,000. Whitney. My Whitney. 8 years of friendship. Birthday dinners and movie nights and crying on each other's shoulders. She'd been getting paid the whole time. The bus came. I got on. Found a seat in the back. And I started counting the days until this would all be over. Whitney texted me 14 minutes after I left Leonard's office. Hey babe, how are you feeling today? Want me to come by later? I stared at the message. 14 minutes. Like she had a sixth sense. Like she knew I'd just learned something important and needed to check in. Or maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just being a good friend. Maybe she texted me every day at this time and I'd never noticed before. I typed back, feeling okay, maybe later, I'll let you know. 3 dots. Then her response. Okay, just checking in. Love you, girl. Love you, girl. The same words she'd said 1,000 times. The same words that used to feel warm and safe. Now they felt like sandpaper on an open wound. I went back to the shelter, sat on my twin bed, stared at the Abraham Lincoln water stain on the ceiling, and tried to figure out what to do next. Leonard had said, act normal. Don't change anything. Don't let her know. But how do you act normal around someone who stole your identity? How do you smile and nod and accept turkey sandwiches from the hands that signed your name on fraudulent credit applications? I'd been doing it for weeks without knowing. That was the part that made me sick. Every time Whitney brought me food, every time she drove me somewhere, every time she sat on my shelter bed and held my hand and told me it was all going to be okay, she was managing me, keeping me close, making sure the investigation stayed pointed at Ryan. The laptop she gave me, that old Dell that ran like a hamster wheel, I looked at it sitting on my nightstand. Suddenly, it looked different. Suddenly, it looked like a surveillance device. Could she see what I searched? Could she track my emails? I didn't know enough about computers to know if that was possible, but Whitney did. Whitney had set up the laptop for me. Whitney had logged into all my accounts. I closed the laptop and slid it under my bed. That evening, Whitney showed up at the shelter. 7 o'clock on the dot, right before the visitor cutoff time. She had a Panera bag in one hand and a bottle of sparkling water in the other. Thought you could use some dinner. She smiled. That Whitney smile. Warm, genuine, the smile of someone who cared. Or the smile of someone who was very good at pretending. Thanks. I took the bag. Turkey avocado BLT. She always remembered my order. We sat in the common room. The TV was playing some reality show about people renovating houses. Maureen was in the corner pretending to read a magazine while obviously eavesdropping. So how was your day? Whitney asked. Fine. Boring. Just shelter stuff. Did you hear anything from that investigator? Leonard something? There it was, the question, delivered casually, like it was just small talk, like she wasn't fishing for information. Not really. I kept my voice neutral. He said they're still looking into things. Whitney nodded. That's good. These things take time, right? Building a case against Ryan isn't easy. Ryan. She said his name like he was the only suspect, like she wasn't also in the crosshairs. Yeah. Takes time. Well, I'm here for you. Whatever you need. Whitney reached over and squeezed my hand. We're going to get through this together. Her hand was warm. Her eyes were kind. Everything about her said, I'm your best friend and I love you. And maybe that was true. Maybe she did love me in some twisted way. Maybe she'd convinced herself that what she was doing wasn't that bad. Maybe she'd told herself a story where she was justified, where the money was compensation for something, where I'd never find out. People are good at telling themselves stories. I know, I said. Thank you for everything. Whitney stayed for another hour. We talked about Emma, about Whitney's job at the veterinary clinic, about a dog that had come in that morning with a stomachache from eating too much grass. Normal conversation, friend conversation. The whole time I was performing. Every smile was calculated. Every laugh was manufactured. Every nod was a lie. After she left, Maureen appeared beside me like a ghost materializing from the shadows. That girl talks a lot about herself, Maureen said. Never asks about you, just checks in about the investigation and then talks about her own life. I hadn't noticed that. But now that Maureen mentioned it, she was right. Whitney asked about the investigation. Then she talked about Emma and her job and her problems. She never asked how I was really feeling. Never asked about my plans. Never asked about my future. Because she didn't care about my future. She cared about what I knew. You're starting to see it, Maureen said. Good. The helpers are usually the problem. There it was again. That phrase. The helpers are usually the problem. I thought you were paranoid, I said. Maureen shrugged. Paranoid people are right sometimes. That's why we're paranoid. She walked away, leaving me alone with a half-eaten sandwich and a heart full of broken glass. 2 weeks, Leonard had said. 2 weeks of acting normal. 2 weeks of smiling at the woman who destroyed my life. I could do this. I had to do this. I went to my room and counted the cracks in the ceiling. 6 now. 1 more than yesterday. The shelter was falling apart around me. But I wasn't falling apart. Not anymore. Something was shifting inside me. The shock was fading. The grief was hardening. And in its place, something new was growing. Anger. Real anger. The kind that doesn't burn hot and fast. The kind that burns slow and steady. The kind that gives you focus. Whitney thought she was managing me. Whitney thought she had me under control. Whitney had no idea what was coming. The next 2 weeks were the longest performance of my life. Every morning I woke up in that twin bed and reminded myself of the rules. Smile, nod, accept the sandwiches, answer the questions, don't flinch, don't slip. Don't let her see anything in your eyes except gratitude. Whitney came by every other day, sometimes with food, sometimes with clothes she'd found at Goodwill that she thought would fit me, sometimes with nothing but her presence and her questions. Always the questions. Any updates from Leonard? Is he getting closer to Ryan? Did they trace the money yet? And I would smile and say not yet and watch her shoulders relax just a little bit, just enough to tell me she was relieved. She thought she was safe. She thought the investigation was still pointed at Ryan and Savannah. She had no idea that Leonard was building a case against her. That every IP address and every delivery signature and every Zelle transfer was being documented and prepared for federal prosecutors. I started noticing things I'd missed before. The way Whitney always steered conversations back to the investigation. The way she'd ask about Leonard's questions and then offer her own interpretations. He's probably looking at bank records. He's probably subpoenaing phone logs. He's probably tracking Ryan's movements. She was fishing, testing what I knew, making sure she hadn't left any loose ends. I noticed other things too. The furniture in her apartment. I'd complimented that Restoration Hardware couch the first night I stayed with her. Got it on sale, she'd said. But Restoration Hardware doesn't have sales. I'd learned that from Leonard. Their outlet prices are still 4 figures for a sectional. $6,400. That's what that couch cost. Charged to a credit card opened in my name. I'd cried on that couch. I'd told Whitney my deepest fears while sitting on furniture she'd purchased with my stolen identity. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. On day 8, something happened that almost broke my performance. Whitney brought Emma to the shelter. Against the rules technically, but Sandra made an exception because Emma had made me a card. Construction paper, glitter glue, crayon drawings of flowers. Feel better, Miss Natalie. You are loved. Emma handed it to me with that gap-toothed smile, missing her 2 front teeth, completely innocent. I looked at that card and I felt something crack inside me. Emma didn't know. Emma thought her mother was a hero, and when this all came out, when Whitney was arrested, Emma's whole world was going to collapse. I hugged Emma and told her the card was beautiful. I told her I would keep it forever. I still have that card. It's in a box in my closet next to the stuffed elephant. That night, Maureen found me in the communal kitchen at 2 in the morning. I was eating peanut butter straight from the jar because I couldn't sleep. "You're doing good," Maureen said, sitting down across from me without being invited. "I can tell you're acting, but she can't tell. That's what matters." "How do you know I'm acting?" 23 years as a paralegal. I can spot a performance from a mile away. You've got that look in your eyes, the one where the outside doesn't match the inside. I took another spoonful of peanut butter. "It's hard," I said, pretending, smiling at her, thanking her for things. "I know. She brought her daughter today. Emma made me a card." Maureen nodded slowly. "That's the worst part, isn't it? The kids. They don't know what their parents are doing. They just love them." I thought about Emma's smile, the glitter glue, the crayon flowers. What happens to her? When this is over? Family maybe, foster care if there's no family. It depends on the situation. That's not fair. Emma didn't do anything wrong. No, she didn't. Maureen's voice was softer than usual. But neither did you. And you're sitting in a shelter eating peanut butter at 2 in the morning because your best friend stole your whole life. She paused at the doorway. Remember that. When you feel bad for her kid, remember that you're someone's kid too. And Whitney didn't think about that when she signed your name on those credit cards. She walked away with my peanut butter jar. Because of course she did. 3 more days, Leonard had said when I called him that afternoon. 3 more days and we'll have everything we need. 3 more days of smiling. 3 more days of turkey sandwiches and questions about the investigation. I could do 3 more days. The next morning, Whitney texted me earlier than usual. "Hey girl, free for lunch? I want to take you somewhere nice. My treat. My treat." With money she'd stolen from me. The audacity was almost impressive. "Sure," I typed back. "Sounds great." She picked me up at noon, took me to a cafe on Vine Street. Nice place, white tablecloths, real silverware, the kind of restaurant I couldn't afford even before my life collapsed. You deserve something nice, Whitney said across the table. You've been through so much. I smiled back, thanked her, ordered a salad I didn't taste. Then she leaned forward with that conspiratorial look she always got when she wanted to share something important. Nat, I've been thinking. When this is all over, when Ryan is caught and you get your money back, you should move in with me. Emma loves you. I have that spare room sitting empty. We could be roommates. Like college, but better. Like college. Two best friends sharing an apartment. Except one of us had stolen $97,000 from the other. I kept my face still. Kept my voice even. That's really sweet, Whitney. Let me think about it. She smiled, that Whitney smile, warm, genuine, completely fake. Of course, no pressure, just know the offer stands. I nodded, took a bite of my overpriced salad. 2 more days. And then, Whitney Barnes was going to learn exactly what happens when you steal from the wrong person. On day 12, I did something stupid. I messaged Amber on Facebook. I know what you're thinking. Why would you do that? Why would you reach out to the sister who stole your husband and helped drain your bank accounts? What could possibly be gained from that conversation? The answer is nothing. Nothing could be gained. It was pure emotion, pure rage, pure 3 a.m. insanity fueled by insomnia and instant coffee, and the weight of everything pressing down on my chest like a concrete slab that someone had forgotten to remove. I typed the message in the communal kitchen while Maureen snored through the wall. 5 sentences, short, direct, the kind of message you write when you want to hurt someone and don't care about the consequences. I know where you are. I know about the money. A fraud investigator is building a case. Federal charges are coming. If you have any conscience at all, you'll call me. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I stared at the screen for 45 minutes waiting for a response. Nothing. I went back to bed. Didn't sleep. Just lay there in the dark thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Thinking about how Leonard had told me not to contact anyone. Thinking about how I'd just potentially compromised the entire investigation because I couldn't control my emotions at 3 a.m. The response came at 7:14 in the morning. But it wasn't from Amber. It was from my mother, Patricia Cross, calling at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning. She never called before 9. She needed her coffee and her morning news and her quiet time before she could deal with anything resembling a problem or a conversation or a daughter who needed help. But here she was, 7:14, calling me. I answered because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment. You need to stop harassing your sister. Good morning to you too, Mom. I'm serious, Natalie. Amber showed me what you sent. She's terrified. She's having panic attacks. She's talking about getting a restraining order. A restraining order. Against me. The woman living in a shelter with $14 to her name. The woman whose identity had been stolen. The woman who had done nothing wrong except trust the wrong people. Mom, she stole my husband and helped him steal $67,000. That's between you and Ryan. Amber was just following her heart. You can't blame her for falling in love. Following her heart. Like it was a romantic comedy. Like my sister hadn't knowingly participated in destroying my entire life while pretending everything was normal at Sunday dinners and birthday parties. There's a federal investigation, I said. Fraud charges. This isn't just about feelings anymore. Silence on the other end. Long silence. The kind of silence that tells you someone is preparing to say something terrible. Then Patricia's voice came back. Harder now, colder. You always have to make everything about you, don't you? You always have to be the victim. You've always been like this. Your father was the same way. Drama, drama, drama. I will not go through it again. I refuse to be dragged into your mess. The line went dead. I sat on my twin bed holding the phone and feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Nothing. Complete and total numbness. Like someone had reached inside my chest and flipped a switch. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. Everything was just quiet and empty and cold. My mother had chosen her side. She'd chosen Amber and Ryan, and the story that made her life easier. The story where I was the difficult one, the dramatic one, the one who drove her husband away with her impossible expectations and her constant need for attention. Fine. If that's how she wanted it, fine. I was done trying to make her see the truth. I was done hoping she would wake up one day and realize what had happened. I was done being her daughter in any way that mattered. Some relationships can be repaired. Some bridges can be rebuilt. And some things, once broken, stay broken forever. I deleted my mother's number from my phone. Then I blocked her. Then I blocked Amber. Then I blocked my Uncle Ray, who never picked up. My cousin Michelle, who said it was complicated. My Aunt Donna, who left me on red. Every single person who had chosen silence when I needed them most. It took about 4 minutes. 4 minutes to erase my entire family from my digital life. I thought it would hurt more, but it didn't. It felt like setting down a weight I'd been carrying for years without realizing how heavy it was. Like finally taking off a coat that had been soaked with rain for months. Maureen appeared in my doorway. Bed hair, slippers, holding a cup of coffee that was definitely made with my coffee grounds. "Heard you talking," she said. "Everything okay?" "I just blocked my entire family." Maureen nodded like this was perfectly normal, like people blocked their entire families every Tuesday morning before breakfast. "Good," she said. "They weren't helping anyway. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. Sometimes you have to drag it to the curb yourself. Either way, the trash has to go." She disappeared down the hallway, probably to steal someone else's breakfast next. I looked at my phone. No family. No contacts except Whitney and Leonard and Sandra from the shelter. My entire social world reduced to 3 names on a screen. But also no one who could hurt me anymore. No one who could call at 7:14 in the morning to tell me I was the problem. No one who could choose my sister over me because choosing my sister was easier than asking hard questions. My phone buzzed. Whitney. "Good morning, sunshine. Coffee later?" I typed back. "Sure. Sounds good." "One more day," Leonard had said yesterday. "One more day and we move. One more day of smiling. One more day of coffee and sandwiches and pretending everything was fine. One more day of looking Whitney in the eyes and thanking her for destroying my life. And then this would all be over." I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair that needed washing, the face of a woman who had been through hell and somehow was still standing. But also something else, something new in my eyes. Strength. Not the loud kind, not the kind that announces itself, the quiet kind, the kind that comes from surviving things you didn't think you could survive, the kind that burns slow and steady like embers. Whitney thought she knew me. Whitney thought I was broken and grateful and completely under her control. Whitney was about to find out exactly how wrong she was. The day before everything ended, I almost broke. It started at 6 in the morning, when I woke up from a nightmare I couldn't remember. Just the feeling of it. Cold sweat, racing heart. The sense that something terrible was coming and I couldn't stop it no matter how fast I ran. I lay in my twin bed staring at the Abraham Lincoln water stain and tried to breathe. Today was the last day. Tomorrow Leonard would move. Tomorrow Whitney would be called in for questioning. Tomorrow everything would change and nothing would ever be the same. But today I still had to perform. Today I still had to smile and nod and accept turkey sandwiches from the woman who had stolen my identity. Today I had to be perfect. And I wasn't sure I could do it. The weight of everything hit me all at once. The shelter, the money, the betrayal. My mother's voice on the phone telling me I was the problem. 8 years of friendship that turned out to be a lie. A husband who wrote his goodbye on a Wendy's receipt. A sister who stole my life and called it love. I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight. My hands were shaking. The walls of my tiny room were closing in like they wanted to crush me. I made it to the bathroom before I started crying. Not the quiet kind this time. The loud kind. The kind where your whole body shakes and you can't stop the sounds coming out of your mouth no matter how hard you try. The kind that feels like drowning on dry land. I sat on the cold tile floor with my back against the wall and I cried for everything I had lost. My home, my money, my family, my best friend, my sense of who I was and what my life was supposed to be. I cried until there was nothing left. Then I washed my face and went to breakfast. Sandra was in the communal kitchen making oatmeal. She took one look at me and set down her spoon. "Rough night?" I shrugged. "Something like that." She poured me a cup of coffee without asking. Black. 2 sugars. She'd learned how I took it over the past weeks. "You know," she said, sitting down across from me, "I've been running this shelter for 12 years. I've seen a lot of women come through those doors, a lot of different stories, a lot of different kinds of pain, a lot of different ways people handle being knocked down by life." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug and waited. The ones who make it, Sandra continued. They're not the ones who never break down. They're the ones who break down and get back up anyway. They're the ones who feel everything and keep moving forward even when moving forward feels impossible. She patted my hand. You're going to be okay, Natalie. I can tell. You've got that thing. That stubborn thing that won't let you quit no matter how bad it gets. I've seen it in you since the first day you walked in here. I didn't feel stubborn. I felt hollow. But I nodded anyway. Thanks, Sandra. She stood up and went back to her oatmeal. Whatever's happening today, she said without looking at me, whatever you're facing, you can handle it. I've seen you handle worse. She didn't know what was happening today. She didn't know about Leonard or Whitney or the investigation, but somehow her words still landed exactly where I needed them to land. Whitney texted at 9. Hey babe, pick you up at 11? I thought we could get lunch and then maybe go shopping. I found some cute tops at Target that would look great on you. Shopping. With money she'd stolen from me, to buy clothes that would make me look nice while she controlled every aspect of my remaining life. The audacity was almost beautiful in its completeness. Sure, I typed back. Sounds fun. I spent the next 2 hours getting ready. Shower, hair, the nicest clothes I had, which wasn't saying much. A pair of jeans from Goodwill and a sweater Whitney had given me 3 weeks ago. I looked at myself in the mirror. Dark circles covered with concealer I'd borrowed from another shelter resident. Hair pulled back in a ponytail because I didn't have the energy for anything else. Eyes that looked older than they had 2 months ago. This was it. The final performance. The last act before the curtain came down on Whitney's little play. Whitney picked me up at 11 on the dot. She was wearing new shoes, leather boots, nice ones. Probably $300 based on the brand I recognized from magazine ads. I wondered which credit card she'd used to buy them. Capital One? Discover? The Crate and Barrel store credit? So many options when you're spending someone else's stolen money. You look cute, she said as I got in the car. That sweater looks great on you. Thanks, I smiled. You gave it to me, remember? Did I? Whitney laughed. I have so many clothes I can't keep track. Emma keeps telling me I need to clean out my closet. We drove to a restaurant downtown. Nice place. White tablecloths again. Whitney loved white tablecloths. She loved anything that made her feel like she was living a life better than the one she actually deserved. We ordered salads. We talked about nothing. Emma's school, Whitney's job, a coworker who was annoying her, the weather, normal conversation, friend conversation. The whole time I was counting down the hours. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, Leonard's office. Whitney had no idea she was eating her last free lunch. She had no idea that the woman sitting across from her was not her broken, grateful friend, but a witness who had been gathering evidence for weeks. She had no idea that every smile I gave her was a performance worthy of an Oscar. She had no idea that her entire world was about to collapse around her. And I smiled and nodded and ate my overpriced salad and waited for tomorrow to come. 22 hours left. I could survive 22 more hours. 9 o'clock the next morning, I was sitting in Leonard Ashford's conference room waiting for everything to explode. The room looked different today. Same marble floors, same brass fixtures, same view of the river through the window. But there was an energy in the air, a tension. Like the moment before a thunderstorm when you can feel the electricity crawling across your skin and raising the hair on your arms. Leonard was at the head of the table. Next to him was a woman I hadn't met before. Dark suit. Sharp eyes. The kind of face that had seen a lot of criminals and wasn't impressed by any of them. This is Agent Reyes, Leonard said. FBI. She's been working with us on the federal aspects of the case. FBI. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The letters felt heavy in my mouth when I repeated them silently to myself. Nice to meet you, I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. Agent Reyes nodded. Mrs. Cross, thank you for your cooperation over the past few weeks. I know this hasn't been easy for you. That was an understatement, but I just nodded. We've completed our investigation, Leonard said. He opened a folder in front of him. Thick. Pages and pages of evidence. A forest worth of paper documenting everything Whitney had done. Everything we need to proceed. He slid a document across the table to me. This is a summary of the charges we'll be filing against Whitney Barnes. I looked at the paper. The words swam in front of my eyes for a moment before coming into focus. Wire fraud, identity theft, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. Each charge carried its own set of penalties, years in federal prison, fines, restitution. The total potential sentence, Agent Reyes said, is 15 to 20 years, though realistically, with a plea deal, she'll likely serve 3 to 5. 3 to 5 years. For stealing my identity, for furnishing her apartment with my credit, for taking $26,000 from Ryan and pretending to be my friend while she watched me fall apart in a homeless shelter. It didn't feel like enough, but it also felt like a lot. Justice is complicated that way. What happens now? I asked. Leonard checked his watch. In about 45 minutes, Whitney Barnes will receive a phone call from my office. She'll be told that we need her to come in for additional questioning as a witness in the case against your husband. She'll think she's coming in to talk about Ryan. Exactly. Leonard's face was neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe, or the quiet pleasure of a man who had spent his career catching people like Whitney. When she arrives, Agent Reyes will be waiting. We'll present the evidence. Give her the opportunity to cooperate. And if she doesn't cooperate, then she'll be arrested on the spot. I sat back in my chair, tried to process what was about to happen. In less than an hour, Whitney would walk into this building thinking she was safe, thinking she had gotten away with everything, thinking her best friend Natalie was still broken and grateful and completely under her control. And then she would find out the truth. "Would you like to be here?" Agent Reyes asked. "When we confront her?" I hadn't expected that question. I thought about it for a long moment. Part of me wanted to run, to let Leonard and Agent Reyes handle everything while I hid somewhere safe. But another part of me needed to see it. "Yeah, finally. I want to see her face when she realizes it's over." Leonard nodded. "You can watch from the observation room, one-way glass. She won't know you're there unless you choose to reveal yourself." The next 43 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat in a small room adjacent to the conference room. One-way mirror on the wall, a speaker that would let me hear everything, a chair that was surprisingly comfortable given the circumstances. I watched Leonard arrange papers on the table. I watched Agent Reyes review notes on her tablet. I watched the clock on the wall tick through each second like it was moving through honey. Each minute felt like an hour. At 9:52, the door opened. Whitney walked in. She was wearing the leather boots, the $300 ones she'd probably bought with my Discover card. Her hair was done. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like a woman who had nothing to hide and everything to gain. "Mr. Ashford," she said, smiling that Whitney smile, "the one I'd trusted for 8 years. Thanks for calling me in. I'm happy to help however I can. Anything to help catch Ryan. Please sit down, Miss Barnes." Whitney sat, crossed her legs, folded her hands on the table like a woman who had done nothing wrong, like a woman who was exactly where she wanted to be. "I understand you have some questions about Ryan. I've been thinking about it, and I actually remembered a few things that might be helpful for your investigation." She was so confident, so relaxed, so completely certain that she was in control of this situation, that she had everyone fooled. Leonard slid a folder across the table. "Actually, Miss Barnes, we'd like to discuss some other matters first. Specifically, the delivery confirmation from Crate and Barrel for $6,400 worth of furniture. Delivered to 1847 Madison Avenue. Apartment 3B. Whitney's face changed, just slightly, a flicker behind her eyes, a tiny crack in the mask. "I'm sorry?" "Your address, Miss Barnes. The furniture was delivered to your address, purchased on a credit card, opened fraudulently in Natalie Cross's name." The room went silent. I watched through the glass as Whitney's world began to crumble, as the mask she'd worn for 8 years started to crack and fall away piece by piece like old paint peeling off a wall. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy, no relief. Just emptiness. And the quiet knowledge that justice was finally being served. Whitney's smile didn't disappear immediately. It froze, like someone had pressed pause on a video and left her face stuck halfway between confidence and terror. "I don't understand," she said. "There must be some kind of mistake. I'm here to help with the investigation against Ryan." Leonard pulled another document from the folder. "This is a record of Zelle transfers over the past 8 months. $26,000 total, sent from an account registered to Ryan Cross. Received by an account registered to Whitney Barnes. Your account, Miss Barnes." Whitney's eyes darted to the paper, then back to Leonard, then to Agent Reyes, looking for an exit, looking for a crack in the wall she could slip through. "That's not... I mean, Ryan and I had some business arrangements. He owed me money from before, from years ago. It's not what it looks like. What does it look like, Miss Barnes? Whitney opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. No words came out. I was watching through the glass with my hands pressed flat against the table to keep them from shaking. 8 months. She'd been receiving money from my husband for 8 months. While I was cooking dinner and doing laundry and thinking everything was fine. While she was coming over for wine nights and telling me I was her best friend and asking me if I wanted to try a new recipe together. $26,000. She'd been paid to help destroy my life. The earliest transfer, Leonard continued, was dated 6 months before Mr. Cross left the marital home. The most recent was 3 weeks ago, while Mrs. Cross was living in a women's shelter. While you were visiting her 3 times a week and bringing her food and asking about the investigation. Whitney's face went pale. The mask was cracking faster now. I could see the real person underneath, the one who had calculated and planned and executed. The one who had smiled at me while she signed my name on credit card applications. I want a lawyer, Whitney said. Her voice was higher now, thinner. I'm not saying anything else without a lawyer present. That's your right, Agent Reyes said calmly. But I should inform you that cooperation at this stage can significantly impact the charges we file and the recommendations we make to the prosecutor. Whitney's jaw tightened. She was thinking, calculating. Even now, even caught, she was trying to figure out how to minimize the damage to herself, how to spin this, how to survive. I watched her and I thought about all the times she'd held my hand, all the times she'd said everything was going to be okay, all the times she'd brought me turkey sandwiches and steered the conversation away from anything that might point in her direction. She was still performing, even now, still trying to find the angle. What exactly are the charges? Whitney asked finally. Wire fraud, identity theft, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. Agent Reyes listed them without emotion. Together, they carry a maximum sentence of 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Whitney flinched. Actually physically flinched, like someone had slapped her across the face. 20 years? Maximum. With cooperation and a plea deal, you'd likely serve 3 to 5. 3 to 5 years. Whitney repeated the words like she couldn't understand them, like they were in a language she'd never learned. You opened 4 credit cards in Natalie Cross's name, Leonard said. You used her social security number, her date of birth, and her mother's maiden name as security questions. You had the cards shipped to addresses on Madison Avenue to avoid detection. You made purchases totaling $29,800. I needed. Whitney stopped herself, shook her head. You needed what, Miss Barnes? Nothing. I'm not saying anything else. You also received $26,000 from Ryan Cross over 8 months. Agent Reyes leaned forward slightly. That suggests a conspiracy, a plan. You weren't just taking advantage of an opportunity. You were working together from the beginning. Coordinating. Whitney's hands were shaking now. I could see them trembling on the table like leaves in a storm. And there was more, wasn't there? Leonard's voice was quiet, almost gentle in its devastation. You didn't just help Ryan steal from his wife. You helped him plan his exit. You helped him time it perfectly. You helped him destroy her credit so she'd have nowhere to turn when he left. That's not true. We have email records, Miss Barnes, communications between you and Ryan Cross, discussing the timeline, discussing how to maximize the financial damage, discussing how to keep Natalie close and unsuspecting so she wouldn't figure out what was happening until it was too late. Whitney's face crumbled. The mask finally shattered completely, like glass hitting concrete. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. It started small. Just a little money here and there. Ryan said Natalie would never find out. He said we'd pay it all back eventually. He said nobody would get hurt. She stopped, looked up at the one-way glass. She couldn't see me, but somehow it felt like she knew I was there, like she could sense me watching. Is she here? Whitney asked. Is Natalie watching this right now? Leonard didn't answer. Whitney stared at the glass for a long moment. Then she started crying, the ugly kind, the kind where mascara runs down your cheeks and snot drips, and the pretty face becomes something raw and broken and desperate. I'm sorry, she said to the glass. To me, even though she couldn't see me standing there. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I needed the money so badly. I was drowning in debt, and Ryan offered me a way out. I stood behind the glass and I listened to my best friend apologize for destroying my life. and I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not forgiveness. Never forgiveness. That was a bridge too far. But pity. For a woman so desperate that she'd sold her 8-year friendship for $26,000 and some furniture. Pathetic, really. That's all it cost to buy her loyalty. To buy my destruction. $26,000. I was worth less than a used car. They arrested Whitney right there in the conference room. Agent Reyes read her the Miranda rights while Leonard gathered the evidence folders. Whitney stood with her hands behind her back, wrists in cuffs, mascara still running down her cheeks in dark rivers. She didn't fight, didn't scream, didn't make a scene. She just stood there looking small and broken and nothing like the confident woman who had walked in 40 minutes earlier wearing $300 boots and a smile that could sell anything. I watched through the glass as they let her out. She turned her head one more time toward the mirror, toward me, even though she couldn't see me standing there with my hands pressed against the cold surface. "I'm sorry," she mouthed, the words silent through the glass. Then she was gone. Leonard came to get me a few minutes later. His face was professional, but there was something softer in his eyes now, something that almost looked like compassion. Like he'd seen this moment 100 times before and it never got easier. "How are you doing?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I thought I'd feel better. I thought I'd feel something." "Justice isn't always satisfying," Leonard said. "Sometimes it's just necessary." He led me to his office. Smaller than the conference room, more personal. A photo of 2 kids on his desk, a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Dad," evidence that he had a life outside of fraud investigations and ruined marriages. "There are some things we need to discuss," he said, sitting down across from me, "about what happens next." What happens next turned out to be a lot of paperwork. The fraudulent credit card debt would be removed from my record, all $29,800 of it. The credit bureaus had already been notified. My score would take time to recover, but the damage would be undone eventually. The restitution process would begin immediately. Whitney's assets would be frozen. Her bank accounts, her furniture, everything she'd bought with stolen money would be inventoried and liquidated. The proceeds would go toward paying me back. "You won't get everything," Leonard warned. "She doesn't have $97,000 in assets. Nobody does at her income level. But you'll get something. Probably around $20,000 to $30,000 once everything is processed." Something was better than nothing. Something was more than I'd had yesterday. "What about Ryan?" I asked. "Agent Reyes is coordinating with authorities in Georgia." Leonard leaned back in his chair. "He'll be arrested within the week. Similar charges, wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. He's looking at serious time." "And Amber?" Leonard shook his head slowly. "Your sister appears to have been unaware of the financial crimes. She benefited from the stolen money, but there's no evidence she participated in the fraud itself. She won't be charged." Of course. Of course Amber would walk away clean. Amber always walked away clean. That was her superpower, being just innocent enough to avoid consequences while still getting everything she wanted. I thought about my mother defending her, about my whole family taking her side, about the restraining order she'd threatened to file against me for sending one Facebook message. She could keep my husband. She could keep my family. She could keep the life she'd built on the ashes of mine. I had something better now. I had the truth. And I had myself. The next few hours were a blur of signatures and statements and legal documents. I signed papers confirming the fraud. I signed papers authorizing the credit repair. I signed papers agreeing to testify if the case went to trial. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was standing on the sidewalk outside the credit union building, the same sidewalk I'd walked so many times over the past weeks, but it felt different now. The air tasted different. The sunlight looked different on the river. I was free. Not financially, that would take time, but emotionally. The weight I'd been carrying for 8 weeks was finally starting to lift off my shoulders like a coat I'd forgotten I was wearing. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Please call me. I can explain everything. I never meant to hurt you. Please, Natalie. Please. Just give me a chance to explain." Whitney. Texting me from wherever they were, processing her, still trying to explain, still trying to make me understand, still performing even now. I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked the number. I walked to the bus stop. Same bus stop I'd sat at for 40 minutes after Leonard first told me about Whitney. Same metal bench. same view of the river reflecting the afternoon sun. But I wasn't the same person who'd sat here weeks ago crying quietly while buses came and went without me. That woman was gone, burned away by everything that had happened, transformed into something new. The woman sitting here now was different, harder maybe, definitely angrier, but also stronger, forged in fire like steel. I pulled out my phone and called Sandra at the shelter. "It's done," I said when she answered. "They arrested her. It's over." Sandra was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm proud of you, Natalie. What you did took real courage. A lot of people would have crumbled under that pressure. A lot of people would have given up. You didn't. I didn't feel courageous. I felt tired, bone tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix and coffee doesn't touch. But I also felt something else, something small and fragile but definitely there. Hope. For the first time in 2 months, I could see a future. Not a clear one, not a detailed one, but something out there beyond tomorrow, a life that might actually be worth living again. The bus came. I got on, found my usual seat in the back by the window, and I rode back to the shelter knowing that tomorrow would be different, that everything would be different from now on. Whitney was gone. The truth was out. The healing could finally begin. I watched Cincinnati pass by through the dirty window, and I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. 3 weeks later, I saw Whitney one last time. It was outside the Ohio County Courthouse, the same courthouse from the beginning of this story, the same parking lot where a woman would eventually stand crying next to a silver Chevy Equinox with 2 cardboard boxes in the back seat and no one answering her calls. But that day hadn't come yet. That day was still in the future, waiting like a promise. This day was Whitney's preliminary hearing. The day she would stand before a judge and hear the charges read against her: wire fraud, identity theft, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. I didn't have to be there. Leonard had told me that. Agent Reyes had told me that. Sandra had told me that twice. "You don't owe her anything," Sandra had said. "You don't have to watch her go through this." But I wanted to watch. I needed to see it through to the end. I needed closure. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling that had seen better decades. Fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. An American flag in the corner that looked like it had been there since 1987 and hadn't been cleaned since. Nothing like the courtrooms on television. No drama, no music, no impassioned speeches. Just bureaucracy in its purest form. Whitney was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no $300 boots, no designer anything. She looked 10 years older than she had 3 weeks ago. Prison does that to people, I've heard, even just a few weeks in a holding cell. She saw me sitting in the gallery. Our eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. I counted, then she looked away. I don't know what I expected to see in her face. Anger, maybe. Defiance. Hatred. Some spark of the woman who had sat on my shelter bed and told me everything was going to be okay while she was stealing my identity and furnishing her apartment with my credit. But there was nothing. Just emptiness. Just a woman who had gambled everything and lost everything. The judge read the charges in a monotone voice that suggested he had read thousands of charges before and would read thousands more after. Whitney's public defender entered a plea of not guilty. A trial date was set for 4 months from now. Bail was denied due to flight risk. The whole thing took 11 minutes. 11 minutes to formalize the destruction of 2 lives, mine and hers. 11 minutes of legal language and procedural requirements, and a judge who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. As they led Whitney out, she turned her head one more time. Not toward me specifically, toward the gallery in general, looking for someone who wasn't there. Emma wasn't there. Whitney's mother had taken her. Temporary custody while the legal process played out. I'd heard from Leonard that Emma was confused, asking where her mom was, asking when she could go home. I thought about the card Emma had made me, the glitter glue, the crayon flowers. "Feel better, Miss Natalie. You are loved." That card was still in my plastic bin at the shelter. I couldn't throw it away. It wasn't Emma's fault that her mother was a criminal. Emma was just a kid who loved her mom and didn't understand why the world had suddenly collapsed. After the hearing, I walked outside into the March sunshine. Cold but bright. The kind of day that makes you feel like spring might actually come eventually. like warmth might exist somewhere in the future. Leonard was waiting by his car. He'd come to observe, making sure everything went smoothly from the credit union's perspective, tying up loose ends. "How are you feeling?" I shrugged. Tired. Relieved. Sad. All of it at once. "It's complicated." "That's normal." Leonard leaned against his car. "Justice is complicated. It doesn't make the hurt go away. It just makes sure the person who caused the hurt faces consequences for their actions." I nodded, looked back at the courthouse. "What happens now?" "Now we wait," Leonard said. "Trial in 4 months. Probably a plea deal before then. Her lawyer will advise her to take whatever they offer. She's looking at 2 to 4 years realistically. Maybe less with good behavior." "And Ryan?" "Arrested last week in Savannah. Extradited to Ohio. His hearing is next month. He's looking at more time than Whitney because he was the primary actor. The mastermind, if you can call stealing from your wife masterminding anything." "And Amber?" Leonard shook his head slowly. "She left Savannah after Ryan's arrest. Went back to your mother's house, apparently. No charges. There's no evidence she participated in the fraud." "Of course. Amber lands on her feet. Amber always lands on her feet. That was her gift. That was her curse on everyone around her." I thanked Leonard for everything he had done. Shook his hand firmly. Watched him drive away in his sensible sedan. Then I walked to the bus stop. Same bus stop, same bench, but everything was different now. I had a job interview next week, data entry at a small accounting firm downtown. Nothing glamorous. $12 an hour, 25 hours a week to start. But it was a start. I had an apartment application pending, a studio in Over the Rhine, $720 a month, tiny, just 1 room and a kitchenette, but it would be mine, my name on the lease, my key in the lock. I had a plan. For the first time in 3 months, I had an actual plan. The bus came, I got on, found a seat by the window, and as we pulled away from the courthouse, I looked out at the city passing by and I made myself a promise. I would never let anyone make me feel that small again. Never let anyone control my money or my identity or my sense of self. Never trust someone so completely that their betrayal could destroy me. I was going to rebuild my life, piece by piece, dollar by dollar, day by day, and I was going to do it on my own terms. The voicemail came 3 days after the hearing. I was at my job interview when my phone buzzed. Data entry position at Harmon & Associates, a small accounting firm on 4th Street. The interviewer was a woman named Patricia, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke given everything with my mother, but she was nothing like Patricia Cross. Warm, professional, actually listened when I spoke instead of waiting for her turn to talk. I got the job, $13 an hour. 30 hours a week to start with possibility of full-time after 90 days. Benefits after 6 months. Nothing glamorous, nothing impressive, but it was mine. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in months, like someone had finally cut the rope that had been tied around my ankles, dragging me down into dark water. That's when I saw the notification. 1 missed call, 1 voicemail, from a number I didn't recognize but somehow knew anyway. Whitney. I stood on the sidewalk outside Harmon & Associates, and I stared at that notification for a long time. People walked past me. Cars drove by. A man with a dog stopped to let it sniff a fire hydrant. The world kept moving while I stood frozen with my phone in my hand. I could delete it. I could delete it without listening, and never know what she had to say. That would be the healthy choice. The smart choice. The choice a therapist would probably recommend. I pressed play. 52 seconds. That's how long the voicemail was. 52 seconds of Whitney's voice in my ear for what I knew would be the last time. "Natalie, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know you have every right to ignore this and delete it without listening. But I needed to say something. I needed you to know." Her voice cracked, the sound of someone crying and trying not to cry at the same time. The sound of mascara running and hands shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know sorry doesn't give you back your money or your credit or the time you spent in that shelter eating peanut butter crackers and counting cracks in the ceiling. I know sorry doesn't fix anything." A pause, heavy breathing, the sound of institutional noise in the background, other voices, doors closing, someone shouting something I couldn't make out. I was drowning, Nat. I was so deep in debt after Marcus left. Credit cards maxed out, rent 3 months behind. They were going to take Emma away from me. Child Protective Services was already asking questions. And Ryan came to me with this plan. He said nobody would get hurt. He said we'd pay it all back before you even noticed anything was wrong. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear her collecting herself. I told myself it wasn't really stealing. I told myself you had plenty of money saved up. I told myself you'd never find out, and if you did, you'd understand. You'd forgive me because we were friends, because I was desperate, because I had no other choice. Her voice hardened slightly, something bitter creeping in around the edges. But that was all lies, wasn't it? Lies I told myself so I could sleep at night. The truth is, I was selfish. I was scared. And I chose myself over you, over our friendship, over everything we'd built together in 8 years of being there for each other. The voicemail was running out of time. I could hear her rushing to finish before the recording cut off. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that somewhere underneath all the terrible things I did, I really did love you. You were my best friend, Natalie. My real best friend. And I destroyed that for $26,000 and some furniture. A long exhale. Almost a laugh, but not quite. I hope you find happiness. I hope you rebuild everything I helped tear down. I hope someday you can think about me without feeling sick to your stomach. Goodbye, Nat. The voicemail ended. I stood on that sidewalk for another 3 minutes, just standing there, breathing, processing the words I had just heard. Then I deleted it. I didn't save it for evidence. I didn't forward it to Leonard or Agent Reyes. I didn't replay it to analyze every word for sincerity or manipulation or hidden meanings. I just deleted it, because it didn't matter anymore. Whitney's apology didn't change what she'd done. Her explanation didn't make it okay. Her tears didn't give me back the months I'd spent in a shelter, or the family I'd lost, or the trust I'd never fully recover. Some things can't be apologized away. Some damage is permanent no matter how many sorries you pile on top of it. But I didn't feel angry anymore. That was the strange part, the unexpected part. I felt nothing. Just a quiet emptiness where the rage used to be, like a fire that had finally burned itself out and left nothing but cold ash behind. I walked to the bus stop, got on the bus, rode to the shelter one last time. Sandra was in her office when I arrived. She looked up and saw something in my face. What happened? I got the job, I said. $13 an hour, 30 hours a week. Sandra's face broke into a genuine smile. That's wonderful, Natalie. And Whitney left me a voicemail. She apologized, explained everything, said she was sorry. The smile faded. Sandra waited. And how do you feel about that? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Nothing, I said finally. I feel nothing. Is that bad? Sandra shook her head slowly. No, honey, that's not bad at all. That's healing. That's what it feels like when you finally start to let go. She stood up and wrapped her arms around me. A real hug. The kind I hadn't gotten from my own mother in longer than I could remember. You're going to be okay, she said softly. You already are. I held on to that hug for a long moment, and I let myself believe her. 6 months later, I was standing on a balcony watching the sun set over Cincinnati. Not much of a balcony, really. More of a concrete ledge with a metal railing that the landlord optimistically called outdoor space in the listing. Barely big enough for one person to stand on without feeling like they might tip over the edge into the street below. But it was mine. The apartment was a studio in Over the Rhine, $720 a month. One room that served as bedroom and living room and office all at once. A kitchenette with a stove that made a clicking sound when you turned it on, and a refrigerator that hummed louder than any appliance should. A bathroom so small you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out wide. 450 square feet of space that belonged entirely to me. My name on the lease, my key in the lock, my electricity bill and my internet connection and my mailbox with my name on it in little stick-on letters I'd bought at the dollar store for $2.37. I'd moved in 3 weeks after getting the job at Harmon and Associates. Sandra had helped me pack my plastic bin from the shelter. She'd hugged me at the door and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Maureen had stolen my last granola bar as a goodbye present, which felt appropriate somehow. Some things never change. The job had gone full-time after 60 days instead of 90. My boss, Patricia, said I was the most organized person she'd ever hired. Attention to detail, she said. You notice things other people miss. I didn't tell her that I'd developed that skill by spending 2.5 weeks pretending not to notice that my best friend was stealing my identity. Some job qualifications are better left unexplained in interviews. The restitution money had started coming in. Small amounts at first, a few $100s here and there as Whitney's assets were liquidated. The furniture she'd bought with my credit was sold at auction. The money in her frozen accounts was transferred to mine piece by piece. $23,000 total so far. Not the full $97,000 I'd lost. Not even close. But enough to put down a security deposit on this apartment. Enough to buy a used Honda Civic with a dent in the bumper that reminded me of my old car. Enough to start building something that looked like a real life again. Ryan's trial had happened 2 months ago. He got 4 years in federal prison for wire fraud and identity theft. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to see his face again. The court documents telling me he was behind bars were enough closure for me. Whitney took a plea deal. 2 years in minimum security, eligible for parole in 14 months with good behavior. Her mother was raising Emma now in a small house outside the city. I heard from Leonard that Emma was doing okay, going to therapy twice a week, adjusting as well as could be expected for a child whose world had collapsed. I still had Emma's card, the one with the glitter glue and the crayon flowers. Feel better, Miss Natalie. You are loved. It was in a box in my closet next to the stuffed elephant I'd never returned and probably never would. Some things you keep even when you probably shouldn't. Some memories hurt too much to hold but too much to let go. My mother had tried to call once, about 4 months ago. I'd seen her name on the screen and felt nothing. No anger, no longing, no desire to answer or to ignore. Just emptiness where something used to live. I didn't answer. I didn't block her either. I just let it ring until it went to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She hasn't called since. Maybe she got the hint. Maybe she's waiting for me to reach out first. Either way, the silence between us feels permanent now. Maybe someday we'll talk again. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear whatever she has to say. But that day isn't today, and it might not be tomorrow either. And I've made peace with that. Amber got married last month. I saw it on Facebook before I deleted my account entirely. A small ceremony in my mother's backyard, white dress, flowers everywhere. Ryan's absence explained away somehow, I'm sure. Some story that made her the victim and me the villain as always. I hope she's happy. I really do. Not for her sake. For mine. Because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. I read that somewhere once. It felt true enough to remember. The sun was almost gone now, just a sliver of orange bleeding into purple on the horizon. The city lights were coming on one by one like stars waking up, cars moving through streets below like blood through veins. I had a cup of tea in my hands. Lipton, the yellow box. 3 sugars because nobody was there to judge me for 3 sugars. A small rebellion that had become a small comfort over these months of rebuilding. I thought about where I'd been a year ago. Married, employed, comfortable. Completely unaware that everything was about to fall apart around me. I thought about where I'd been 6 months ago. Homeless, broke, betrayed by everyone I'd ever trusted. Sleeping on a donated mattress that smelled like industrial bleach and counting cracks in the ceiling. And I thought about where I was now, standing on a tiny balcony, drinking cheap tea, watching the sunset alone. Not rich, not comfortable, not surrounded by family and friends who loved me unconditionally. But okay. Actually genuinely okay. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. The solitude didn't feel like punishment. For the first time in my entire life, being alone felt like enough. Felt like freedom. I took a sip of my tea, watched the last of the sun disappear below the horizon, and I smiled. Not a big smile. Not a triumphant smile. Just a small one. The kind that comes from somewhere deep inside when you realize you've survived something you didn't think you could survive. My name is Natalie Cross. I'm 37 years old. I live alone in a tiny apartment in Cincinnati. I work a data entry job for $13 an hour, and I'm going to be just fine. And that's my story. The story of how my husband stole $67,000 and disappeared with my baby sister. The story of how I ended up in a women's shelter with $14 in my pocket and a stuffed elephant borrowed from an 8-year-old girl. The story of how my best friend of 8 years turned out to be the mastermind behind my destruction. But more than that, it's the story of how I survived. Not gracefully, not heroically. Not like the women in movies who face adversity with perfect hair and inspiring speeches. I survived messily. I survived by eating peanut butter straight from the jar at 2 in the morning. I survived by crying in public bathrooms and counting cracks in ceilings and pretending to be okay when I was anything but. I survived by putting one foot in front of the other, even when I didn't know where I was going. If you're watching this and you're going through something similar, if someone you trusted has betrayed you, if you feel like your whole world has collapsed and there's no way forward, I want you to know something. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not making it up. And you're going to be okay. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But someday you'll stand on your own balcony, in your own apartment, drinking your own tea with too much sugar, and you'll realize that you made it through, that you're still here, that the people who tried to destroy you didn't win. They don't get to win. You do. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here until the end. Thank you for letting me share the worst and best parts of the hardest year of my life. If this resonated with you, if you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. And remember, the only person you can truly count on is yourself. But that's not a tragedy. That's a superpower. See you in the next one.